So good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us today. We're excited to discuss our Gen Z students and how we are collectively adapting to address their expectations, maybe their ever-changing expectations. I'm Kim Canning, Vice President of University Partnerships at Kaplan. My team works with colleges and universities across the country. Many of you might have had conversations with us about our All Access program, which we'll be hopefully able to touch on later. But before we get started, I just wanted to share that personally, I have two Gen Z kids, 13 and 16. So on a very young end, but I clearly see some of these changes that we'll be diving into today. And I really appreciate the way this generation is pushing us to continue to evolve and think differently, not only about careers, but mental health, relationships, worldviews, all of it. So I'm really excited to get everyone's perspective and thoughts. So with that, let's just dive in. I'm going to ask my panelists to join me. So as a way to get started and introduce our amazing panel, I would love for us to set the stage with some information about each of your schools. If you can share your background as well as a brief profile of your institution and maybe what you're most excited about right now, given that it's November 11th and we're almost to Thanksgiving. So Rochelle, I'd love to start with you, and then if you can just pass it on to your co-panelists.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rochelle Jordan Davis. I bring you greetings from Alabama A&M University, located near Huntsville, Alabama, in Normal, Alabama. We are an institution that is considered historically Black college and university. We were founded in 1875, and we are a land grant institution. We have over 7,500 students enrolled in our university with over 60 programs and certification programs as well. We are excited about the opportunity to share our experiences with students here on the university campus. And my background is in higher education administration. I currently work with getting students through the pipeline of health professions. Previously, I was assistant dean at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, where I worked with the Office of Diversity Affairs. And I'll pass it on to Melanie.
Perfect.
Thank you. Melanie Murphy. I am the Executive Director of the Knowlton Center for Career Exploration that is at Denison University. We are a fully residential private liberal arts institution in Granville, Ohio. It's about 30 minutes from our capital, Columbus, and we serve about 2,400 students. My background is I've been here at Denison for, this is my 11th academic year, but prior to that, I worked in the nonprofit sector in the general Columbus area. I think what excites me right now is the kind of personalization we're really getting into with career pathways for Gen Z, and I'm excited to talk about that on today's call. And I will pass it over to Aaron.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Veterans Day and National First Gen Month. I am the Director of Opportunity Programs at Hamilton College, which is located in Clinton, New York. We're a small liberal arts school, just under 2,000 students. We're known for our open curriculum, and we're known as a school that really prepares students to be strong written and oral communicators. I think something I'm really excited for, aside from Thanksgiving break, is that we have a relatively new president who is engaging the entire campus in our strategic planning through the strategy of aspirational design. So it has brought folks from all different parts of campus, both academic affairs and facilities, dining and student life, to look at what are the challenges that our institution's facing moving forward. What does this next batch of students, both Gen Z, but also Gen Alpha, what are they looking for? And it's been really cool to get to work on that with people that I don't get to work with very often in my day job. I'll pass it to Deb.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Erin. My name is Debbie Stiefel, and I'm Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs at University of Detroit Mercy. We are an urban-based university. We're in Detroit, Michigan, a very up-and-coming economy and city. Very excited to be here. I've been here for 13 years. And the University of Detroit Mercy is a Catholic institution, and it is also sponsored by two charisms, the Society of Jesus, Jesuit education, and also the Sisters of Mercy, which is kind of an unusual combination because there are no other Jesuit universities that also have Sisters of Mercy looking them. So what's exciting to me right now is just the diversity of the students who are looking to come to higher education. We know that there are concerns that they have about cost and return on investment and all of that, but I feel that higher education in general is primed to be able to deliver what we think is an education that just cannot be topped. They need to be able to think critically. They need to be able to wade through all the stuff that's going on out there. So it's been a real pleasure to be here in Detroit because I feel like we're probably an indicative city of what's going on in the United States. I started my career at Loyola University, New Orleans, another Jesuit school. And after Katrina, I moved to Susquehanna University, a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, which was a fantastic school. And then 13 years ago, I moved to Detroit and have been here ever since. Welcome, and thank you for having us here today.
Thanks, Debbie. And thanks again to all our panelists. Thanks for that great introduction. I love the geographic, the school, all the diversity that we have represented, and excited to dive into it. So to dive into our discussion, let's first start with defining from this group kind of the new characteristics of Gen Z. Erin, I'm going to start with you because you brought it up when we all got onto the panel earlier. What are some of the biggest themes that you've been seeing with the rise of Gen Z kind of compared to past cohorts of students, or like even just comparing them to past cohorts of students? And how does Gen Z look differently on your campus, or does it look differently?
Sure, absolutely. So Gen Z, they are something. But one thing I'll highlight is that they seek authenticity and transparency, right? They don't want someone to tell them what they want to hear. They want someone who's going to give it to them real. And they want to know why things are the way they are. Why do things work this way at our institution? It's almost like having a bunch of toddlers running around. Why? But at the end of the day, like, they want to make sure that anything they're committing time and energy to is worth it for them. And they want to make sure that those things are aligned. So when we see that, oh, maybe student attendance at a campus program isn't what we saw in previous years, maybe that program doesn't align with what is important to students. So I think they are much more focused on making sure something is worth their time before they give their energy. Mental health and well-being is hopefully a focus for every generation right now, but it's definitely something that Gen Z is focused on. But not just like, oh, I need therapy. Like they're seeking mental health well-being across the spectrum. And I see it most often when they refuse to do certain things, and they are looking at protecting their mental health and not exerting themselves again to things that aren't mission aligned for them. I'm also seeing that they're willing to engage in new pathways. They're willing to try things that they haven't tried before. And they're also willing to leverage digital spaces in ways that just past generations I've worked with have not necessarily. I will say they're also overwhelmed when it comes to the digital space. So ed tech, for any institutions where you have an app or a website or software for everything and they don't all connect, that is causing all sorts of confusion. And don't ask them how to use Excel because they don't know.
That's great. I see a lot of heads nodding. Anybody else want to jump in? and add to what
I
Erin.
would. I'd like to jump in because, realizing what shapes this particular generation, technology, obviously, as Erin mentioned, because they're digital natives. They grew up with this. We were here before Google came out, so that makes us very, very advanced in age, maybe. But they're also experiencing a lot of economic turbulence, more than previous generations, recent generations. And so, being digitally fluent, they have access to a lot of information, but I'm not sure it's a lot of accurate information. And so what I think that a lot of Gen Z students are looking for is purpose and values built into the education. Yes, they want the emphasis on technology, social media. They've already curated their online presence. They know who they are there, but they want the personalization, and they want us to help them further define what they're going to do and what they're going to be. So, they're very interested in outcomes. And their parents are too, by the way. The 4-year graduation rate is alive and well with parents. And so it's incumbent upon us to try to provide information about our outcomes, how we're going to help them get a job, what that job could look like, help set their expectations and temper their maybe misconceptions about getting out of college and making $170,000 a year, because that's what they want to do. But it's not just about us helping them, but it's also about them working with us. So it's a very mutually decided upon education. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences that I see. We're learning from them, they're learning from us, and we're putting together a pretty great pathway for them for the future.
Melanie, I see you're off mute. Did you?
Yeah, I'll just throw in one quick thing. It goes right along with what you've been saying, Debbie. They're entrepreneurial. Like they are craving independence. They're already coming to college with side hustles, and they want that flexible path to success. And it may not look as linear as it has in the past. So, this year on how it looks on our campus, we saw a record number of students applying and coming to Denison who already had their own businesses on the side. Everything from small little shops to big dreams that they want to pursue after. So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that over the years.
That's amazing. My 16-year-old is figuring out side hustles all the time. And I was thinking, oh, really? You're going to do another one? You're going to try something else? But it is definitely a trait that is alive and well and front and center. Okay, great. Rochelle, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Or?
Yeah, they've been influenced by social media for most of their lives. So they want stuff instantaneously. Even when we are working with them, it might take a moment for us to say, let's think about that and let's come back and talk about it. But before you get back to your office, they will have emailed you with, questions with points and want you to circle back to it. So they want things instantaneously. And we have to be prepared to meet them where they are. So a lot of times we have to go and ask other people or their peers, can you help us get to where you are, technologically? So I see that as a major component of the Gen Z population.
Yeah, that instant gratification almost, right? Having to manage those expectations. Before we move on to the next question, I did just want to let the audience know, we will be taking questions at the end. But the Q&A is open. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw those in, and we'll get to as many as we can before the end of this session. So kind of just diving a little bit deeper. So when we think about the application of how institutions can adapt to Gen Z, as has been talked about, I think everybody's mentioned this, is a key trait of Gen Z is that they're telling us that they want a practical, career-focused education. Maybe it's also their parents that are setting them on this path, as Melanie mentioned, with the 4-year graduation rate. But they want to know that they'll have a job after college. So they want ways to build skills, and they want their education to connect to a job, especially in this ever-increasing competitive job market for younger folks. And then when you think about the added layer of AI competition, So what are some ways that your schools are addressing this shift and really kind of almost doubling down on career readiness? Rochelle, I'll start with you.
Well, with us, it's about practical experience, giving them the knowledge, skills, and awareness necessary to meet their goals and objectives that they've laid forward for themselves. But when we are dealing with those students who are interested in the health professions, there is a track that they must follow. And sometimes there is a deviation from that track, but most of these students know what they have to do. But sometimes we have to say, hey, let's take a pause and think about this. Are you sure you're ready to pursue this career? Do you have all the information that you need to make sure that you will be successful in the career? And so it's our jobs. Well, I see my role as helping them navigate that path, that career path, to make sure they have everything that they need to be successful, whether it's providing an internship opportunity or connecting them with someone who's been on the path that they've been at Alabama A&M University. We have a wonderful alumni network. We have a youth motivational task force. So that has been supportive of us helping our students meet those goals.
Debbie, go ahead if you're.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We have just embarked on a brand new strategic plan that was approved by our board. And Aaron, know where you are there with a relatively new president, which can be traumatizing, but very exciting because a lot of things come in, new changes. And so I'm excited about where we're heading as an institution to provide practical experiences for students. One of the goals of our strategic plan is to make sure that 100% of our students are participating in a high impact experience, which could mean anything from a capstone project, service engaged learning, collaborative projects, undergraduate research, but also very specific co-ops and internships, and maybe even micro internships where maybe a student works on a project for 6 weeks with a particular company, very focused on a project. So providing those kinds of experiences for students is important because it complements what we do in the classroom. So I think I'm very happy with the way our strategic plan is progressing, and I think our students will benefit from our plans for them, and they seem to be, because they're coming here to participate in these things.
I really like the micro internship idea. I think that kind of goes to what maybe even what Rochelle was saying about allowing students the space and the time to figure out what they want to do and make sure that they're really on the path that they can be successful on. That's really, it sounds like a great option. Instead of like a full year internship or a big, huge commitment, it gives them more of a taste of what they can do.
As well as partnering with industry in your area. I know we are a really tech-driven industry here in Huntsville. We have NASA here, we have Blue Halo, we have a lot of industry, related to STEM, and we are one of the largest HBCU STEM producing graduates in the nation. So we pride ourselves on making sure that we have those cooperative agreements and MOUs with industries in our area to make sure our students have a leg up on when they leave this institution, that they have some practical experience and they've been able to apply what they've learned in the classroom at the business level as well as in a health care setting.
Yeah, I agree with, oh, sorry, Erin. I agree with all of that. I mean, I think when we are, going back to the characteristics we were talking about with the Gen Z audience, they've grown up with this personalization, everything from Spotify playlists, skincare routines that are tuned to their specific DNA. They've been curating everything, Netflix recommendations, right? Everything is so carefully curated and personalized to them. And so I think that become an expectation from their college and career journey then. So I do think that they're craving pathways that are kind of prescribed for them, but they also want to be able to curate and personalize that pathway specifically to them. And so I think we've been playing with some really fun things on our campus about how to do that, how to guide them through something that feels structured, because they do crave the structure and the instruction on what do I do next, but in a way where they can make it uniquely their own. Erin, it goes back to you talking about the authenticity. They want things to feel authentically like them. We've designed a journey program, which is meant to be completed by the end of your sophomore year, that helps students explore careers on purpose. So, I don't know about you, but many of you folks on this call probably maybe fell into a career based on, interactions, and that's always going to happen. But if you could spend some time intentionally exploring on purpose and finding different career paths that might be interesting to you, and then finding ways, whether that's through additional skill building courses or doing things like credentials through Kaplan, or just all different ways that you can make it your own and make it your own curated experience along that pathway, I think is what is really resonating with Gen Z right now.
At Hamilton, I mentioned that we're open curriculum, so students really come in and they have a blank canvas and they can paint it any way they want, but that oftentimes leaves them with little structure, little guidance on how to get to maybe where they want to be. So at Hamilton, we have the ALEX initiative, which stands for Advise, Learn, and Experience, which is a play on our founding trustee, Alexander Hamilton. And so there is advising set up early in their experience, and it's about helping students take all their different courses, their different experiences, the clubs they take leadership roles in, the study abroad opportunities, everything, and help them figure out their narrative, so that as they're growing and utilizing the Career Center and networking with alumni and doing internships, they understand their narrative and can use that as they're applying for jobs or fellowships or whatnot. So we're very big about the narrative at Hamilton and helping students to reflect, to help them learn more about themselves.
And that's the key, Erin, helping students to really understand themselves. Gen Z students they want to be participating in something that is original. They want to bring originality to the table, and they want to use original thought and original contributions to kind of set them apart from, say, maybe your typical, oh, I'm going to be a business major, and so I've got to do this, and this. We're finding a lot of students, for example, who want to study business, but they also want to study law. So how do you bring those two things together? And sometimes they realize that, no, I like law better, or I can see how those things combine. We have a wonderful theater program here. And believe it or not, there are a lot of students who are in maybe technical fields or nursing or architecture who have talent, and they want to be able to express that, so they can be in a drama minor and participate in the plays that our theater program is putting on, so they can get that extra, they have multiple personas, I guess, maybe that's a way to describe it. And so helping them discover how to connect all of those things together, like you guys are doing at Hamilton, Erin, is just, I think it's just so important for us to realize that that's what students are looking for, not just your cookie cutter major, but how can we really help them personalize and become original thinkers when it comes to their education.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Rochelle, go ahead. Yeah.
How do you blend the expectations of the parents with the students? Gen Z students tend to take ownership of their own learning, but they still have the influence of their parents, because either they're helping to support them to get through college, or they have a career path that they want. So how do we as administrators help them hone in on what they want to do, what's in their heart? Because it is about getting out of college and, finding a career that you love, that you may change in your lifetime. We know with this population, they probably will do that a couple of times, but there are some Gen Zers who are about, okay, when I get out of here, I want to have a job, and how can you help me get to that point? So how do we balance that, or how do you balance that at your institutions?
Great question.
Well, that's a great observation, Rochelle, because you know a lot of students who are very talented in math and science think, "Oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, let me be a doctor. Let me be a dentist." And so what we find is that once they figure out what doctors and dentists actually do, well, maybe I don't want to do that. So what else is there? There are many other avenues that students who want to major in the sciences can take that are outside of, quote, being a doctor. And so helping them navigate, like, what do those look like? Administrators in health science or at hospitals, or if you are looking to be an architect, for example, you want to be an architect, maybe not just teaching them how to build those buildings and move here, move there, but our value system also dictates that we want them to see what those values can bring to whatever major they're in. And so it might not be straight to that profession, that very structured profession. So how can we bring community development into our architecture program, which makes it more interesting and applicable? Because you know, Gen Zs are very interested in values. They don't want just, well, yes, they want to make money when they get out. Don't believe me. We know that. We hear that. We hear that more from the parents, but helping them see the good in doing something beyond or doing something different than what they had originally thought they were going to do, because all they think is, you know, law, doctor, dentist. There are so many more things that students could participate in. So that great observation. Yeah.
Melanie, you went off mute. Did you? No, you're good. Okay. So I love all these ideas. I love hearing about, you know, kind of the curated experiences and personalization. You know, as we talk about how to focus on postgraduate success, obviously one of the solutions you all have chosen is Kaplan's All Access License. As Melanie mentioned, to offer free resources to all of your students on campus for graduate admissions exams, licensure, credentials, and our workforce readiness programs. So now that your students have access to these free courses such as MCAT, LSAT, Confident New Hire, Critical Thinking, Melanie, maybe you can start off by sharing your thoughts around, you know, why you chose to pursue this type of partnership. I mean, I think we started, it was 2 years ago when we were at a conference presenting together that we really started digging into it, but I'd love to hear kind of your thought process and, you know, what made you push to bring all access to your campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we started working with Kaplan a few years ago and said, you know, we want to try this small. We want to start offering some MCAT, GRE, and LSAT test prep. And we want to offer that to students because we know there's this quiet divide between those who can afford extra test prep and those who can't, and that asking for that requires you know, maybe some people to put themselves out there in a way that might be uncomfortable, to say, hey, I'm a student who can't afford this. Maybe my peers can, but I can't. And so we started with those kind of three, and they were, you know, we put the call out, we bought a certain number of spots, and I mean, literally like within 12 hours, every spot we had offered were gone. Like, wow, there's something here, there's a demand here, and we need to dig into it more. And so we spent a lot of time talking with students and understanding that. And you know, as we learned more about the various opportunities within the Kaplan All Access Pass tool, and we learned about how students really wanted to take, you know, their history major and add a project management credential and, you know, gain very specific skills in another area. It just really made sense to us to be able to offer something that would be free to all students, take a major source of stress off of the table for them, and be able to help them with that flexibility of kind of customizing, right? We've been talking a lot about flexibility in student and this generation wanting to have flexible, customizable things where their path feels slightly different than their roommate's path. And this has allowed us to do it. And it has been, as students have noticed, they've really taken to it, and they feel seen and supported, and not just because it's free, but because we listened, right? We heard that there was a need. They didn't want to have to be the one to raise their hand and say, hey, I can't afford this. And my roommate does, and she's getting into better grad schools than I am. And so that's been a really awesome way for us to empower our students.
I would say that we invested in this a couple of years ago because for the same reason. We have a lot of students on financial aid, and it is difficult when they know they have to take those high stakes tests in order to get into medical schools, grad schools, dentistry schools, or master's programs in other places. So we have a word for a little something extra in New Orleans, Louisiana. I don't know if you're familiar with New Orleans. That word is called lagniappe. And that means a little something extra, like a baker's dozen. So what can set us apart from other schools is that we offer this service, and it just goes with the territory. Students don't have to pay extra for it. But I think the icing on the cake to this program is also serving our faculty and our curriculum experts, because they can go in and they can see where students are taking the test, the pretest, and maybe falling down in a couple of areas. And they can, our faculty can go back and look at specifically where the students are having difficulty, and maybe even supplement the education in the classroom with some of those areas where it looks like our students may be having difficulty. So while it's good for them, it's really good for us too. So we've been really pleased with that. And our pre-med person who works with students told me specifically, by taking cost off the table, it really shows our true commitment to student success. And after all, students should be our #1 priority, and their success should be our first priority for them.
I love that.
And I guess
Michelle,
for us,
Yes.
for us at Alabama A&M, it shows that we are invested in our students. We believe in them. We want them to have the confidence to know that they can do this. And we eliminated that barrier of financial obligation. So it's about taking ownership of your own education, making sure you realize your goals, and to know that you're not alone in this journey. You came here as a freshman, and we want to see you. Our motto is start here, go anywhere. And we believe if they have access to the tools that Kaplan provides for test taking, they'll be well prepared and go into testing with less anxiety because they've had several opportunities to prepare.
So I'll just add to what Melanie said, when she's saying they listen to their students, we really were listening to our partners who are asking us for this type of support, I think, in response to what students needed. And so our partners were saying to us, how do we get more resources into our students' hands, kind of regardless of what path they're going down, whether it's directly into a career or onto professional graduate school. I love the example of a history student wanting to add a project management course. I mean, that was kind of what propelled us to develop the All Access program. And so I'm thrilled to hear this response around it. It's great. I am going to pivot us a little bit. I think this has been mentioned a couple of times around Gen Z prioritizing mental health. And I loved how, Erin, you said not just, usually I think when we say mental health, you're right, people think, oh, therapy, or, do we need to take some Prozac, or like, what are those things? But that it goes beyond that. They're actively working to destigmatize mental health and really championing the expansion of support services. I don't mean to keep saying this, but I see this in my 16-year-old, right? I mean, it is a truism for this generation. So as we think about schools giving students more of that sense of stability and structure to support mental health, what types of services specifically, or what types of programs are you prioritizing for students? And how is this changing the way that administration and faculty think about supporting students in general? Like, is it affecting the whole campus, or is it more pocketed? I'd love to hear a little. I'd love for us to talk about this a little bit more.
I'll say what I appreciate about Gen Z is that they've challenged us to reimagine how we define wellness and success. And as I mentioned before, like, yes, the counseling center, they know it exists. You know, at our school, the counseling center can't see everybody. And so we had to come up with other systems to make sure that we were meeting needs. So that means partnering with services like Better Minds and Mantra. It means having therapy dogs on campus every other week, and finding other ways to really create a community of care, so it's not just on the counseling center to support all 2,000 students. Something else Hamilton's doing this year that's pretty cool is we have a focus on fail better, and sort of destigmatizing when things go wrong, and helping students to understand that everyone who's at this institution didn't get here from being perfect. So we actually had a panel back in earlier this semester with our campus president and faculty members. And it was a really great, authentic conversation showing students that, like, it's actually okay to mess up. It's okay. Like, obviously there's different people have access to failure in different ways. But helping students to understand that during your 4 years in college at Hamilton, you can make mistakes. You can try difficult courses, even if it's not going to allow you to have the perfect GPA. And we're really just trying to help students recenter what success actually means to them, because to get into Hamilton, they sort of had to be perfect, and now they're here, and it's a lot harder to be perfect. So those are some of the things we're working on at Hamilton.
I love that idea, the fail idea. That's great, because we've all been there, right? And I think it's important to say too, and you mentioned it, it's not, although 94% of Gen Z students in a recent poll said that they had mental health challenges, it's not about mental health, it's more about well-being. And well-being is different than mental health. Well-being is, allows people to achieve their full potential, being an optimal and dynamic state where they can just be the most that they can be. And so how do we help them get there? We try to model the behaviors. We try to teach good habits, get sleep, exercise, eat right. Therapy and counseling are available, but peer support, like you said, students can help. And not just digital either. Students are craving person-to-person encounters. So it's really important to make sure that they can, see other people who may be struggling or how they're handling things. So I thought it was, I heard a strategy, I think I mentioned it to you guys earlier, where students were saying things like, I program in my day a particular time to worry, and I'm only going to worry during that period of time, and I'm not going to worry at any other time. And I thought, wow, I need to adopt that at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're thinking about the budget, right? So, I looked a little bit more into it, and the strategies made sense to me. It sounded, like find a location. Make sure it's not too comfortable, because if it's comfortable, then you'll equate worry with comfortableness. So make sure you're sitting on a hard chair, or, and then think about the things that you have to worry about, and, split them into two packages: things you can do something about, things you can't do anything about, and kick off the ones you can't do anything about, and then try to solve the ones that you can. But I also think it's important for us to measure how well we are adapting ourselves to helping students. So we have done a mindfulness survey. We're going to do another mindfulness survey. And there's a lot of those questionnaires out there. But if you could kind of monitor and test the things that you're doing to see if it really does help students, mindfulness, relaxation strategies, things that are real, strategies as opposed to just making an appointment with the wellness center, things that they can do on their own, and and bond with other people who may have similar things in common with you, and you can work together to do meditation sessions or exercise sessions. So there's a lot that we can do as institutions to model and show students how they might be able to handle a lot of these stressors on their own.
One thing that we're actually looking at, I think, again, based on feedback from our partners and specifically around this, one piece that we're considering adding to All Access because of this feedback is a course around mindfulness, growth mindset. I think, we've heard from all different levels, from undergrad, dental schools, med schools, graduate schools, students don't have the experience of failing a test, and that's going to happen at some point. And how do they what do they internally do with that? And so, we've done some piloting with that. So I'm hoping that's something, that we can do going forward, because I think it is definitely a big issue that students are grappling with right now.
And it's also about actively listening to your students. You can almost tell when something is, going on campus. You can just feel, what the students are going through, especially when we approach midterms. That's kind of where we see things getting kind of heavy. And, students take it upon themselves to talk with their student government leaders. I know here at Alabama A&M, and they advocated for a student health well-being day. So we support those initiatives by our student government associations, because they have their finger on the pulse with the students. They're in the thick of it with those students as well. So we try to make sure we are listening to our students, we're being empathetic, and we are supporting them so that they can get, what they need to make sure that they are healthy and have an attitude that they can accomplish what they need to.
And don't you think too, part of well-being isn't just the individual piece of well-being, but it's the well-being of the community. And so if we can portray a healthy well-being in our community, it kind of filters down into the individual well-being part for our students. So, I want to be part of an organization that has a very positive well-being. I feel like I have it here. And I know that students are coming from situations and life situations where it's not always positive. So if we can provide that safe space for them, and students have told us that they feel safe on our campus, that to me is the ultimate that we can do to help them navigate that part of their life and their education, because they have so many stressors in their lives, including trying to keep up with their peers, and how do they look on social media, and all of those things, to try to put that aside and concentrate on themselves and having a really positive self-image about themselves.
Right. I think some great advice. I am going to take a couple of questions from our audience. We have a couple of really, really great ones. So to start with, how do you prepare your staff, especially advisors and career coaches? This is a good one, to navigate these conversations with students about really personalized paths without expecting the staff member to know every potential career option? That's a good one.
Yeah.
Melanie, you jumped on first.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump into this one. Yeah, this is hard, right? And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I think that the way to do that, and we've been through this. It sounds to me like potentially you may be a school that has a generalist model where all of your career coaches are potentially, you might have a student who's interested in marketing, followed by a student who wants to go into law, followed by someone who's in the arts. And it can get really hard to kind of know a lot about all of that. We were in that place several years ago, and we did move to a career communities model. So all of our work is done in 6 still very broad-based career communities. So for example, just to give one, financial services, consulting, and business is all one career community. still very large, but that the individual in that who kind of oversees that career community has, so that coach that's in that career community has a peer career fellow who's also working with them to learn and find internships and opportunities, and also has an assigned employer and alumni relations person to help develop the relationship with our employer partners. And so that was really, it's really interesting. So we've been looking at the data, and from the moment that we switched to this career communities model, we saw engagement skyrocket.
Wow.
So as soon as we personalized everything to what the students wanted, and they didn't have to wade through their newsletters and their emails that were really, again, personalized to them because they are used to their Spotify only feeding them what they want and Netflix only feeding them what they want. Our charts they're fun to look at because it literally just everything skyrockets. So now that takes financial resources because it often will take more humans. So you will need more people. But if we go back to what Gen Z is craving and wanting, it is that personalized relationship, high touch moments, and it's hard to do that with a slim staff. And so where you can, advocating for more career center resources, I think is the way to go.
That's great. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Well, I love the idea of career communities. I think that is a fantastic idea. I'm glad, I love you guys because I'm getting ideas from you, and face it, we don't all have the market on every strategy. So I think it's really important for us to connect like this and find out what we're doing, and across divisions too. I'm not in the career office, but I supervise the career office, and I'm really learning a lot from you guys. One of the things that we've had trouble with is engaging students with each other in productive and efficient ways. So we recently implemented an app for this based on the Rafter platform, where students can get on, they call them rafts, and they can connect with other students who are on that raft. So maybe they're in that organization or they're in that major. And so instead of sending out 50,000 emails to everybody about, oh, this is going on or that's going on, they can just go in there and find what they're interested in. And we're finding that that's helping to engage students more. And it's also helping us with our faculty engaging with students too. Instead of sending emails to all their students, they're forming their own rafts. And our writing center has its own raft, and our career center has its own raft. So and students seem to be really, it's another digital platform, but it's also one where they can connect with each other directly. They can chat with each other directly, and not have to chat with the world. So I think the more that we can find things that are kind of a cross between personal and digital is really helpful for all of us and for our students.
So it sounds like you've given them a curated experience, back to that Gen Z instant gratification of curated experiences.
We're trying. We try everything.
Well, I think that's huge feedback that we hear with our partners as we work with administrators. How many more emails can you send out that students aren't going to look at, or how many more posts can you do that they're not going to engage with? So I think those are two really great examples of how to get to that personalization in different ways, but still get that end result of engagement, which is clearly key to Gen Z. All right, I'm going to move on to another question. A frequent issue this is also a good one, a frequent issue for employers and professional graduate programs regarding Gen Z is their ability to engage with the existing culture of a workplace or program. How do we as educators and student service professionals help Gen Z learn how to plug into existing organizational culture and intergenerational cultures in those organizations? That's a good one. Who wants to take a first crack at that?
I'm happy to jump in. I think this is a fine line, and it really, the way that you define kind of fit in culture, I think a lot of Gen Zers are entering workplaces that need to evolve, and the Gen Z entering that workplace knows it. But we need to help them understand kind of their place and their space that they take up in that organization, and where they can and how they can initiate change. And so sometimes we have conversations with students about like, what are deal breakers for you about an organization, that when you're there are certain things you're not going to know from the outside until you're in, you're not going to know. But when you are looking, what are the deal breakers? And then having to decide for yourself, um, is that something that I can, is that something about my identity or my values or my personality that I am willing to bend or shape or change to fit into a new culture or an existing culture? And then once in, how can I kind of encourage the change from within? Or do they need to find the place where they can come in and feel that fit immediately? So, it's a lot of this, I think, is it's building cultural agility for our students. So, helping them understand how to flex their skills and abilities across different intergenerational teams, because they are going to be working across, multiple generations, and how do they stay grounded in who they are, and maybe also because we know this is a group that is, socially conscious, and they want to make impact and change, but how do they do it in a way that's not, I remember several years ago, there was a big story about some interns who immediately came in and wanted to change the dress code, and all interns were promptly fired because they approached it the wrong way. And so how do you have the conversations that say, hey, this is something that I'd love to have change, and approach it in the appropriate professional way?
And I guess we just have to talk to our students about, it's not just about the degree, it's about what can you do with the skills that you've acquired while you are on your campus. I know a lot of employers talk about Gen Zers lacking, the soft skills necessary to perform certain tasks. So we as administrators need to just make sure that we give them access to that information and help them learn to navigate that system, whether it be with critical thinking, digital fluency. They've got to carve out a niche in each one of these areas. They might not become, proficient at everything, but if they have just enough that'll take them to the next level, I think that'll make all the difference in the world for these students.
That would be great advice for students. A lot of Gen Zs place value on work-life balance and flexibility, and maybe some of that is borne out from COVID, where I have younger staff members who say, "I want to work from home." Okay, so what does that mean, and how? I think sometimes we, as people who are in the working world, have to also think about how we're approaching things, because the workplace is changing, and some of those companies that are going to be inflexible about everything, you must do it my way or you go to the highway. Maybe working with some of our alumni, asking them how they're handling this at their businesses, and helping them understand the mindset of the Gen Z student, doing things like this, but for employers, because they might lose some really fine employees if they can't offer some flexibility. And I totally agree with you about, you can't walk in and say, I want this, 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 and this, but teaching them, Rochelle, like you said, how to handle things more gingerly, how to use good social skills to communicate things that make you happy, things that don't make you happy. And so I think emphasizing communication skills is probably one of the biggest things that we can do for our students.
Great. I'm going to touch on one more kind of characteristic of Gen Z, kind of the cost conscious, as we've mentioned a couple of times, they've seen from past generations and probably also experienced themselves high student loan debt. They grew up during the recession, family members losing jobs, incomes. So obviously the cost of college is more and more important to their, college choice. Each of you are addressing this kind of cost consciousness mindset and lowering the cost of college for your students through all access, Kaplan's all access license. What have you heard from students about how this has made an impact in their lives? And how is it making a difference when it comes to, to that kind of cost conscious, discussion that is clearly happening with these students?
No, it's not all just about cost. It's about the enhancement of the experience you can have when you come to one of our schools, and you may not be able to get that at another school. So even though you'll have a similar program, will you have those enhancements at the other school, or will you go to a school that gives you those add-ons that make it worth more? I'm not saying cost is not an issue. We all know that, but we have to promote the
The
value
value.
added to
Mhm.
what we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one less thing that they have to worry about. It's a couple less hours that they have to work to get that budget up to where they need to take that prep course. So it's about, for us as well, it's about retaining the students that we have here, to say that we understand that costs may be prohibitive for some things, but when it comes to you being prepared once you leave this institution, at least we believe in you, we invest in you, and that we're going to give you this opportunity to build your confidence and advance yourself well beyond this institution.
I work primarily with first gen students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And I can tell you that even my students who are just coming in and are years away, maybe from taking the LSAT or the MCAT, just knowing that they have access to this prep is a game changer. It's opening doors for them that they didn't necessarily think about for themselves because they just haven't had access in the past. So for working with students from non-traditional backgrounds, or just students who aren't used to having access to things, it changes their whole demeanor when they think about like, oh, I kind of want to become a lawyer. Now they know, oh, I can be prepared to go on to law school. It also helps having seniors who have taken the LSAT prep and the MCAT prep and who are hyping it up to our younger students. So I'm excited to see, the impact over the next couple of years.
That's exactly why we do what we do, Erin. I love hearing you say that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and share, something that our president says often that I really love is that he doesn't want students to see the 4 years of college as the best 4 years of their life, but he wants them to be able to look back in 50 years and say, because of that college, because of that experience, I've had the most amazing 50 years I could possibly imagine. And I think things like this are game changers in the moment. So that, 10-point increase on a test can mean the difference between, different admissions to different schools that might offer, more comprehensive packages or rides or, all kinds of things. And I think that is life changing, and you may not even see it until 30 years down the road. How that one test prep offered you, maybe you didn't think law school was for you, but man, that was there and free. And so you gave it a whirl, and here you are in a place you never imagined. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how we've done it, but we are at the end of our time. Every time we do one of these webinars, I think, oh, are we going to have enough time to discussion to fill? And we are down to the last second. So I just want to say again, thank you to all of our panelists, Debbie, Rochelle, Melanie, Erin. We so appreciate your time. And we also appreciate the time of our attendees today. Thank you for spending the hour with us. And hopefully we all get to chat again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.